Well, folks, it looks like it's all over. This is a memorial service, a funeral, an autopsy, if you will, of a dead gaming series. That being the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. From 2007 to 2019, is by far one of the greatest crossovers in the video game industry.
I don't do my iconic victory dance for nothing. Okay, I guess just this once I can do it for nothing. Ew, ew, ew.
And I gotta be honest here, I don't really care that much because as much as I do think it's cool to see these two gaming franchises team up, I do think it's very sad that this gaming series has ended just due to NFTs. Like, are you kidding me? Because it's not really like my cup of tea, to be honest. It's really just a collection of just mini games. That's not really my type of gaming. But I honestly do admit, I think it's cool just having these two iconic franchises coming together. But after a while, it does kind of get old. But, you know, it's dead, so like, whatever, I guess, at this point. But besides that, to get to the main point of the video, is in relation to Mario and Sonic being gone, is overall about the whole state of Sonic in terms of his spin-off games. Because honestly, when it comes to his spin-off games, I feel like they are very important to his overall lasting stance of the franchise at large, and just in an overall sense how we could be losing them in the future. Because when it comes to Sonic, or any real gaming franchises overall, the main franchise games, the mainline games, or major releases, are basically what makes the games for that series, for that like generation of gaming, and honestly is like what presents that franchise. In Sonic's case would be something like Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Heroes, or even Sonic Lost World.
I'm supposed to be the fastest, but I was too slow to save my buddy.
And for spin-offs, while they are important, they don't exactly define a franchise. I don't think they get enough credit, in my opinion, because honestly, I feel like they are the backbone of keeping a franchise alive and well, because while a major release for a game would take like 3 or 4 years each, those games kind of fill in like that slot for like that year, and that's honestly what the Sonic games has been doing all this time up until recently. And because I just feel like less and less nowadays that it's just not becoming so in the becoming years. Because in general with Sonic, I think his most defining trait in both gameplay and the franchise itself is just the overall variety that it has and how it never follows a strict path, both for good and bad. But when it comes to spin-offs, I feel like they are honestly the best when it comes to the video game series. Not due to quality, because that could come into question time to time, but more so just like how there's just many games that differ from one another, and it's just like so amazing, honestly, to see how well they've done so. Because to fully cover this, it's just to do a brief history of Sonic's spin-offs, and to do that, we're gonna have to look all the way back at the 90s. Alright, yeah, so after looking at the 90s, honestly, I think outside of the classic Genesis games, like the main lines at that time, the spin-offs don't really matter, just because, like, most of the games were, like, on the Game Gear, and unlike the Game Boy, they didn't really gain any popularity, or, like, really, like, fun to play. And, like, out of all the Game Gear games, the only good one, I guess, is, like, Triple Trouble. And at least to his credit, they still use Fang the Sniper, who came from that game, so that's like, I don't know, take as that as you will. But besides that, we have like Sonic the Fighters for arcade. I mean, like, okay, sure. Sonic Spinball, that's like a nightmare to control. And the less said about Sonic 3D Blast, the better. And Knuckles Chaotix, I don't even think that's canon anymore because of Sonic Heroes. And then finally we have like Sonic R, which is like a janky mess, but I cannot deny that soundtrack goes hard.
Can you see the sun shining on me? It makes me feel so free, so alive. It makes me want to survive.
So overall, the 90s is not the best example for Sonic spinoffs, but at the turn of the new millennium, this is where Sonic was truly hitting his stride. This is where he was cooking in terms of overall mainline and spinoff games.
Circa 99.
So, to start off the 2000s, this was truly a renaissance for spin-offs. Like, just look at how many games we have in the 2000s overall. We had the Sonic Advance trilogy, Sonic Battle, Shadow the Hedgehog, the Sonic Rush series, the Sonic Riders series, the Sonic Rivals series, the Storybook games, and the now defunct Sonic Olympic games. And while not technically a spin-off per se, this was his first introduction to the Smash franchise. This is the best that Sonic has to offer in overall variety and gameplay. It introduced a whole bunch of new characters and overall was even able to build upon the world and legacy of Sonic as a whole. I went to address these games more, but now we have to look at the 2010s. And I'm not gonna lie to you, this has to be the biggest fall off I've ever seen. Because we had the Sega Sonic Team Racing series, which is like decent, but it's just like a Mario Kart clone. And then we have Sonic 4, which I try to pretend didn't happen, man. That is a fever dream and a half. And then we had Sonic Dash, and that's like a mobile game. And then we had the Sonic Boom series, which isn't even like related to the main line. So like, I don't know, man. And then we had, I'm gonna be generous here, Sonic and Lego Dimensions. And I'm like, dude, what the hell happened here, man? I have the reason why, like by just looking at this in a retrospective sense, and it is honestly sad. And I know we're still in the 2020s, but I guess I could kind of look at this now, and we still don't have spin-offs with Sonic. I mean, like the only one we really do have is like Sonic Dream Team, and that's actually a good one. That's actually a decent spin-off. Like what else do we have? Like Sonic Rumble, like that's just a Fall Guys knockoff. So like, what happened here? And I kind of know why. I have a genuine answer here. It's not like concrete, but I feel like it's fairly obvious to tell what happened. And that honestly just comes down to technology. Like that simple as it. Because as I mentioned in the 2000s, the whole thing about that era of gaming is that there was a bunch of different consoles and handhelds and all that sort of stuff with different levels of power, capabilities, and overall just a sense of Sonic being placed wherever he could get his grubby little hands on. Like he was on the GBA, the DS, the PSP, all the major consoles, and everything else. But nowadays, handheld gaming is basically kind of dead because of iPhones. So like instead of having games like Sonic Rush, we now have like Sonic Dash. And this isn't even like a Sega like Sonic type thing. This goes for like everyone when it comes to like publishers and all that stuff. So don't think of it as just like a Sonic thing. This kind of just contributes to the overall just like declining of like gaming overall. And with the gaming during this time, something in general we lost with gaming that many gamers wouldn't know about this nowadays is overall just like being able to make like just simple games. Because during this time, it was like the PS2, like Wii, PS3 era, to where technology was like starting to increase in power, but you could still make these like cheap to make games. And there was this video that I watched recently on YouTube from Lemon. It was about the downfall of gaming. And it was interesting to see how back then, not every game had to be a AAA release that costed millions of dollars to make. And now that's all we get nowadays. Like for every Star Wars Outlaws that we get nowadays, we had dozens of Star Wars Demolition, Star Wars Bounty Hunter, Star Wars Jedi Starfighter, and many other games. But that's honestly just a conversation for another day, to be real. Like I could end this video here and just say Sonic Spinoffs died just due to the rise of iPhones and the death of just smaller games and the rise of AAA and the video game industry as a whole. And how just overall, in a sense, the video game industry has been just taken over just by the entertainment industry. Like, you probably don't know this, but like the video game industry now makes more money than the movie and music industry combined. And I feel like it's just lost its soul because of this in regards to just the money and the overall people that like work on games now. Because there are a lot of great developers and great people still working on games, but it's just the suits that just make them this way, honestly. Because while they were smaller and were not like as important compared to like the mainline counterparts, they were still like able to add lore and have like importance to the overall adventure of Sonic and his friends that live in it. Like, for example, for how simple the Sonic Advance games are compared to other spin-off games during that time, it was still able to slowly add more characters and story within them. Like hell, and in Sonic Advance 3, it was able to tie into another spin-off game, being Sonic Battle, with Eggman creating General out of Emerald's data from that game. And this was like the second time Sonic and Eggman teamed up in a game. And as mentioned with Sonic Battle, in a world building sense, it is incredible that the GBA was able to expand upon and give more backstory of Jill Robotnik and give context to Gun and the whole creation of Shadow. It even brought back the Death Egg, which unironically was done better than Sonic Forces. And in terms of story, no joke, is on par with the adventure era of games. And it was even able to have themes from the cast, like the idea of pacifism from Cream, or even the idea that a weapon can have a soul from Shadow. And those are just GBA games. We even had a dedicated game to just Shadow the Hedgehog. Now, is it good? No, not really. Honestly, it's the fact that it was able to switch up variety and tone so quickly. Like, imagine back in the day you're playing Sonic Heroes, and then 2 years later, they just give you a gun. And in a world building sense, it also includes aliens in the universe, which, to be honest, is done better in Sonic Colors. Like, take a genuine look at these two together and tell me which one belongs in the Sonic universe more. And then we have the Sonic Riders games, which honestly, in my opinion, is the best and perfect spin-off game for Sonic, because while it is hard to master, and trust me, they don't make it easy for you, I feel like it honestly captures the cool nature of Sonic and what he represents, and how it kind of deviates from how most platformers fall into the trap of just becoming a Mario Kart clone, which eventually Sonic did turn into. So that's not a good example. But the point is, the Sonic Riders games, it includes a whole new world of like extreme gear, hoverboards, and the history of the Babylonians and like their ancient race. And honestly, that's something like no other series could truly do in a sense like how Sonic can. And also, something I appreciate with Sonic Riders is the fact that they were able to have full cutscenes and a full story, like with Sonic learning extreme gear. I know back then it would seem kind of like, you know, like the norm, but with games like Sonic Team Racing having like these like speech bubbles and just PNGs, it makes you honestly appreciate how games were back then. And then we also had the Sonic Storybook games, which admittedly like doesn't really add to like the Sonic universe, but it shows how Sonic can work in like different environments and locations. And it's just the fact that some people even argue that they're mainline games, because like technically, if you want to get technical here, they were made by Sonic Team on home consoles. And then we have the Rivals games, which I'm not gonna lie to you, like, do people even remember the PSP? Like, I feel so bad because this game was like the one to reintroduce Silver, since 06 isn't like canon. So Silver just cannot catch a break, man.
I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist.
And then we have the Rush series, which honestly, they just feel like mainline games themselves. Like, it has tight controls, it was like the first of the Boost series, and the story is top of the line when it comes to a handheld title. To the point where Blaze's story is one of the best in the franchise and is mentioned in her later titles. And speaking of characters, I enjoy how characters like Cream or Blaze basically just became mainstay and beloved characters. And that's just like what the 2000s were, just being like so great with spin-offs. They felt like they had their own dynamic and own sense of life that's kind of was like zapped out of in the 2010s or even now. Because the 2010s, the problem with the spin-off games where the Kinect basically killed the writers' games. Sonic Boom just took over a portion of that decade and ruined the franchise, or didn't affect it at all. And with mobile games, everything else was just crossovers and cameos. Like Lego Dimensions and Smash Bros, like that was really about it for like side Sonic stuff. So far with this decade, we had Sonic Dream Team, which, like I said, I can't lie, that feels like a traditional spin-off game, but it's an Apple exclusive, so like, dude. Besides that, you know, in terms of like nowadays, all we have are just like re-releases of previous games, so like not really much there. Overall, I feel like Sonic Spinoff games were once really great games and honestly affected the overall state of the franchise as a whole. And I don't know, I really wish they could come back. Like, I really kind of miss the old days of gaming. But personally, I feel like someday Sonic can come back and have amazing spin-off games. But, you know, I'm kind of also doubtful of that too, so I don't know, man. We'll see what happens in the near future. But we do have Shadow. He's back, so hey, that's pretty cool, right? But yeah, if you like this video, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. Thank you so much for watching till the end of the video, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm Blacked Out Reviews, and I reviewed it, so you don't have to.